he's talking to General Hawk, and General Hawk is famous in the G.I. Joe universe as, like, you know, the head man. Like, him and, I think, Lieutenant Flag are, like, the top nouns that have become generals in the G.I. Joe army.
Nouns that have become generals. I like that.
I am a Hawk. I am Flag. My name's Flint. I am... Well, Duke actually works. But yeah, most of those are just words that have become... that have somehow gained sentience. Somehow the American ego has come to life to lead this government.
Aww.
You know what? I almost started this with good morning. Good morning! Like we're...
Good morning, America!
Yeah, we're a radio DJ, like, on your ride to work. Good morning! This is Reno and the Bees on your morning ride. Actually, you're the bees, by the way.
I have been called worse. I'll let it slide. Go for it.
I'm sorry. I've lured you here under false pretenses. This is actually Comic Dissection with Reno, Dino, Valentino, and Cecilia Rose, a comic book club. Thank you. Where we read books together and examine them from a leftist intersectional lens, so you don't have to do it alone.
Yep. If you're gonna read, you're gonna read anyway. You might as well do it with other people.
Come along with us. And for this week, we have the final of at least part one of our 80s cartoon boys show nostalgia of the shows that I grew up with as a wee lad. And we are discussing IDW's 2009 G.I. Joe Cobra line, written by, let me get these names right, Mike Costa and Christos Engage, with art by Antonio Fugio. And I will start out by wagging the finger at Antonio. I wasn't a huge fan of the art here. No, which really isn't a knock on Antonio. It's just this particular art style, the kind of vague, very Hellboy style of not very defined pictures. Like, I don't know. It doesn't do it for me. But I do think it probably is good for this kind of military spy espionage. The style complements the storytelling style well, or the genre well, is what I mean to say.
I could have done with a little bit more distinguishing. I had a really hard time telling the two girls apart from each other. They look identical.
Why did you have him fall in love with two black-haired, nondescript face girl?
They looked the same. There's one part where one of them comes out in the rain, and I'm like, "Is this the first girl, or is this?"
I thought the exact same problem.
The second girl was the first girl in disguise for a bit. Like it.
Oh yeah. To make things worse, you meet the first girl, and then you meet her again with a different hairstyle.
Yeah.
And the only thing that distinguishes the first girl from the second girl is their hairstyle. In fact, they even both have the same hair color. They both have black hair.
Yeah.
So,
that part was a little... Yeah, I got confused for a minute.
I did as well.
And honestly, I was confused right up until the part where he, spoiler, kills her. And then the other girl's still there. And I'm like, oh, I guess they are two separate people. Okay. Well, that makes me like this character less.
Yeah. He gets around.
He's a slut, this okay?
Fella.
He's
Chuckles.
A slut.
He really is. He really gives off action hero vibes. Like, he is very much that guy.
Yeah.
He is very much that guy. And so, we're jumping right in. This may be our most controversial episode.
I told him before we started recording that this may be the first time I lightly roast the comic as we go through it, because this is the first time I have actively had to work to get through one of these. I liked...
and then I reminded her we'd already done He-Man. But
I liked He-Man better than this. Here's the thing.
Which is good, because we will probably go back to He-Man. I don't know if we'll go back to G.I. Joe
Here's the
at any
thing.
point.
Here's the thing He-Man has going for it. Mm-hmm. I don't care that much for Adam and He-Man, and that's, you know, whatever. He's alright.
Yeah.
But at least He-Man has, like, magic and, like, a cool world.
Yeah.
This is just the U.S. government, and I'm already sick of it.
It's gritty.
It's not even gritty. It's just, I like my stories to be escapes.
Yeah.
This is too much reality.
This was too real. Yeah. I absolutely... I had not read this in a while, and I forgot the very strong, like, it is very, and this is why I think this is going to be controversial, not because you didn't like it, like, although there will probably be a few G.I. Joe neckbeards in the comments coming for you, but... Bring it. But I think more because it's not, what is there a word for army propaganda? I guess Hollywood, but like, you know, you got propaganda. Is there Armaganda?
I think it's just propaganda, isn't it?
I guess it's just about the government and the military. It's just propaganda. But this is very pro-American propaganda, anti-communist propaganda. Like, a lot of it takes place in Russia. And there is that whole, like, you know, if communists was successful, Russia would be successful. E2 brutai. Like,
yeah.
A lot of that going on that I absolutely flushed out of my brain because of the last 20 pages, which we will get to. Which is funny because it's a story that is almost in no way connected to the rest of the story. And focuses on the bad guys, who honestly are way more fascinating than our hero. The other thing that attracted me to this, besides watching the cartoon in the 80s, was the main character is a guy named Chuckles. That's a G.I. Joe code name. And I remember you talking about in He-Man how hard it was for you to... there would be parts where it was taking itself seriously, but you had people named Triclops and Skeletor and Man-at-Arms and stuff like
Here's
that.
The thing.
And that made it more difficult.
The laser dude was the worst one. Sir Laser-Lot.
Sir Laser-Lot! In the first 20 pages where you're introduced to Sir Laser-Lot.
Yeah, that one was the worst.
The guy had a lot of lasers. What are you going to call him? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you don't have an answer now, do you, Cecilia?
You can't see me kick him, but just know it's going to happen.
You're going to hear it. You won't see it, but you'll hear it. And you'll hear my high-pitched yelp of, ow, why? But it has Chuckles. And the reason I liked him as a kid is because his toy had a Hawaiian shirt on. And I thought it was really cool that this dude was going into war with a Hawaiian shirt. Also, remind you, I was a kid of the 80s, and Hawaiian shirts were cool in the 80s.
They're cool now, too. They're bringing a comeback.
I feel like...
they're making a comeback.
They are, with Proud Boys, and hence their problem. Along with...
You're right. No.
Much like fedoras, we can't have nice things. Like, things I wish we could.
No, you're right.
Yeah.
I was thinking of, like, luau's and shit, but you're right.
Yes, I'm sure if we were on the coast of Maui... Which, you know, we got a Patreon now if you want to start supporting it.
Yeah. We want to go to Maui.
We will do a podcast in Maui for you all, obviously. But yeah, dude had a Hawaiian shirt, and I thought he was cool. So when I would play G.I. Joes or have them wrestle for the Intercontinental Championship, he was in the picture because I thought he was a cool-looking guy. Didn't know anything about him. And this came along in 2009, so this was way later.
Right.
But much like these other... 80s franchises, it got a dark, gritty reboot.
Yeah.
And wow. Dark and gritty. Doesn't begin to describe it. So, yeah. Get ready to dive in with us and go ahead and get your hot water running because you're going to want to take a shower afterwards.
Yeah, that's fair.
So, we open with a very Did you not, Cecilia, describe this as the Jack Reacher of comics?
I did. One of my first notes is this has a very Jack Reacher feel to it. Yes. And I don't like Jack Reacher either. So
fair enough. But we have a full page of our hero, heavy quotation marks here.
Yeah.
Walking down the street saying, funny story, I can't remember my name today. And he talks about how 18 months ago I was Jason Wright. See, almost Jack Reacher right there. Running guns through Laotian minefields.
Laotian?
Laos. I know it's Laos, but I don't know what
I think it's Laotian.
Laotian. All right. Last January, I was Derek Fell, employee expert contracted by the Taliban. My eyes are freaking watering.
Allergies.
It must be allergies. I hate the springtime. And after that, I was Marcus Quinn, working security for a Colombian drug lord. Says, dude gets around.
Blondie lives an exciting life.
He does. I like that he can't remember his name. And some guys walk up behind him and they're like, oh, you done well, Mr. Lang. He's like, yes, Mr. Lang. Got it. Yes.
That's what I am today.
Have a name. Great. So these people that he meets are totally betraying him. They're like, hey, you did a good job. And this part was weird. They didn't pull out, knives. And they're like, oh, you've served your purpose. And I thought that was odd because when you decide you're going to betray someone, knives? Come on. I get it. He's in the Soviet Union, but
I love that.
I feel like the mafia in the Soviet Union.
Yeah,
has
I was
guns.
going to say this is. He's complaining about it being a communist mafia, and that's why you can't trust them.
Yeah,
I feel like the problem is that they're a mafia, not that they're communists.
Yes, this is our first on page 6, right out of the gate. We get our communism dig. He says, "Never trust a communist, even ones who've turned capitalist. They just have a problem with the idea of fair compensation." And I'm like, ugh. You are already getting on my bad side, Chuckles.
Poor Chuckles.
We have just started. You are already bothering me. But right when he's getting ready to get stabbed in the back, somebody in the alleyway fires a bullet and saves him. And Chuckles is a little surprised. And I think this is one of the things I liked about this originally. Mm-hmm. I am a sucker for this. I don't know what to call it. Observational detective Sherlock Holmes shit, I guess is a great word. Where the dude is observing all this stuff that's happening at the same time. Right. He's like, oh, there's another sniper up here. I didn't even see the one coming down behind me. Like Chuckles is a situational aware guy. He knows what's going on around him. And he knows that if these people wanted him dead, he already would be. Because there's at least 3 people he can see that have guns on him. Right. But this guy's telling him that, uses one of our favorite tired metaphors. Time to stop splashing around in the kiddie pool. We feel you're ready for deeper waters. And they set up a meeting for tomorrow. And Chuckles is really excited because all of this stuff he's been doing, he's been trying to work his way. Turns out he's a spy for America, and he's an undercover agent. He's trying to work his way up to the big wigs. Yep. And
he's trying to get the right people to notice him.
Yeah. The guys at the top of terrorism. Which, man, you are going to find out how vague of a term that is. Right? That's fair. And how blurry the lines are. Which, if I'm going to give props to this, I think that's a place to do it, because They really are, they don't lie about how dirty America's hands get. I think the only lie they tell is it's for the betterment part. They're very clear about, this American, and not just American, this action movie hero idea of you've got to do some bad to get some good. It was very much that fucking what we were talking about in Transformers when that guy was gonna blow up San Francisco to kill the robots. He's like, well, kill 1 million to save 1 billion kind of deal. This is all about justifying that mindset, trying to get you.
Like I said, very Jack Reacher. It's very just military propaganda-esque and
absolutely.
Chuckles is
that guy, and I will say this: he's talking to General Hawk, and General Hawk is famous in the G.I. Joe universe as, like, you know, the head man. Like, him and, I think, Lieutenant Flag are, like, the top nouns that have become generals in the G.I. Joe army.
Nouns that have become generals. I like that.
I am a Hawk. I am Flag. My name's Flint. I am... Well, Duke actually works. But yeah, most of those are just words that have become... that have somehow gained sentience. Somehow the American ego has come to life to lead this government.
Aww.
And then, this is the first time where I feel bad for him. Every time I feel bad for Chuckles, I end up regretting it. But I feel bad for him here because they tell him, hey, we're not going to be in communication with you anymore. So until we pull you out, this is it. And I can't imagine how fucking lonely that would be. Like, you're in a foreign world. You're doing stuff that you are not comfortable with for the U.S. government. And you have no leadership and no guidance. Like, the last thing we see on this page is him setting his passport on fire. Like, he is completely burning his old identities to get in good with this higher-up group that he doesn't know anything about. Which, whew. And then on page 9, he says, 10:30 a.m. in Estonia. This is the kind of alcohol... He's bitching about the bar they're meeting in. He's like, the whiskey tastes like it was distilled through a pig. But that's what you get in Estonia at 10:30 in the morning. And I was like, isn't that what you would get anywhere at 10:30 in the morning?
Yeah, I feel like mixed drinks... I mean, outside of, like, the famous toastry, the mixed drinks you get... Or the drinks you get early in the morning.
Morning drinks, great. Yeah. Like, if you're drinking that early, yeah, you're probably not gonna be happy, obviously. And the guy he's meeting looks just like him. So we're going to get a lot of this, where characters look like other characters. So Chuckles is a blonde dude, and the guy he sits down in front of is also a blonde dude. To the point where... But then, on the next page, his hair color changes. So he sits down, he's blonde.
I thought that was Chuckles.
No, Chuckles has the blue...
Oh, you're right.
Hawaiian shirt.
I never even noticed that.
Yeah, so from page 9 to page 10, this dude's hair color changes from blonde to brown. But for a page, I was very confused. Because it was...
You're absolutely correct. I didn't even notice that.
Yeah.
I just assumed that was Chuckles and kept on moving about my business.
Yeah, Chuckles, master of disguise, just immediately changes clothes from one panel to the next.
I just saw a blonde dude, and I'm like, okay, I know who this is.
So they play the game of, hey man, like, aren't you sick of being a small fry? And he's like, I am sick of being a small fry. How much you gonna pay me to be a big fry? Etc., etc.
The weirdest job interview ever.
Yeah, and at one point the guy's getting ready to leave. Chuckles is upset because he's like, oh, I'm gonna have to kill this guy. And that's gonna set me back at least 6 months. And I'm not super clear on this part, like why he's gonna have to kill him at this juncture. But
maybe he thinks he'll sell him out to whoever he's auditioning for.
Yeah, he does say your last 3 engagements drew the attention of a high-level counter-terrorist organization. We believe they are American. We believe you've become a high-profile target for them. Perhaps that influences your decision. And then Chuckle says, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. And the stranger says, then you may not be the man we seek. And he gets up to leave. Yeah,
I think it's just a matter of he thinks that this guy will maybe go back and, like, tell him not to bother with him. So that means he has to die.
Okay, that makes sense.
That's what I assumed at any rate, that this went badly, and he's like, oh, gotta...
Yeah, gotta kill this guy because I don't want a bad recommendation on my resume.
Yeah.
On my terrorist resume. Like, I want to get hired by the Yakuza a little later, and man, that
looks bad.
It looks bad. It does. If you're not the guy we're looking for, like, you're looking for cutthroat, like, horrible people. And really? I didn't make the cut?
I've worked so hard to be terrible.
I've been so bad. And he really has. Like, they don't go into a lot of detail, but...
He's running guns.
His soul is just getting darker and darker. Like, he kills a lot of innocent people. I don't imagine
that you get to be a spy. Like, I always thought as a child that, like, being a spy would be fun and shit. But in all honesty, I don't imagine you get very far in that field if you're someone with a conscience.
Yeah. The same could be said of the military, mayhaps. And again, this may be why people are going to be ripping their Support Our Troop bumper stickers off their cars, or they're going to stop listening to our podcast. Like, I feel like this between this is going to take a
hopefully
darker turn the further we go.
Hopefully, by this point, we've already weeded out quite a few people with all the gay shit. So, like,
yes.
Hopefully, by this point, we've got a at least slightly left-leaning base who's willing to listen to the fact that
just follow us down this rabbit hole. And if you don't like it, come back in 2 weeks. We'll have something else for you that probably will not mention the U.S. military at all.
Yes, it will. You're right. It will not mention the U.S. military at all.
So, right when Chuckles is getting ready to burn this bridge, an explosion happens, and in comes 4 people that, Cecilia, you would not recognize, but are G.I. Joe stalwarts to those of us who watch the 80s cartoon. I'm guessing this is Tunnel Rat. This is the only one I don't recognize. But we have Scarlet, Duke, Roadblock, some old famous people from the show.
Did you say Roadblock?
Roadblock! Yeah.
These things hurt me. I want you to be aware of that.
In the cartoon... You think that hurts? In the cartoon, only spoken rhyme. Like, everything he said was like hip-hop lyrics.
Bad Shakespeare knockoff?
I would say hip-hop lyrics is a little more racist than that. But he was a really good chef.
These things hurt me.
Yeah. Little 8-year-old me, that went right over my head. But, yeah. Good old Roadblock. Our chef hip-hop artist.
Oh, my God. Okay.
And so, for me, Chuckles takes off running and starts shooting. He shoots Scarlet. He shoots Roadblock. He shoots these people, and I'm like, oh, didn't see. And Duke actually yells out, no. And I'm like, oh, shit. That's something I didn't expect for our hero to get.
I didn't know that wasn't Chuckles that yelled out no. I thought that was Chuckle.
Yeah, again. My boy.
I'm like, you're gonna
Fuso, work on your faces. They're a little hard to recognize. Yeah.
I thought this was a setup, and I'm like, well, if you yell no after you shoot somebody's gonna notice.
This is why I'm not cut out for this, and I'm right now worried that like Antonio Fuso is gonna hear this, and I'm like, dude, I don't want, dude, you're a famous comic artist. I don't want to fuck with you. Like, obviously, people like your style. I have trouble telling your faces apart, and so did Cecilia. That doesn't mean you're a bad guy. I'm sure your art's great.
Well, here's the thing. One. You've just got, like, a cast of interchangeable white dudes for the most part.
Not Roadblock? He is a hip-hop chef of color. He is a POC. He's a bald POC. He gets shot real quick, but...
I feel like
and you will never see him again. And you will never see him again. But
so anyways, you've got an interchangeable cast of white dudes for the most part. And,
yes.
like, they're not very distinguished. Like, they're not... At least give a bitch a name tag if you're not gonna, like...
Give a bitch a name tag. That's why I'm glad they gave Chuckles this pretty Hawaiian shirt, because it helps me tell them apart. Like, man, if he didn't have that shirt, I don't know if I could. But he does. So, him and his contact end up escaping, all because of Chuckles. Like, Chuckles does some crazy-ass Jack Reacher shit. Let's just call it what it is.
It is, yeah.
And he gets his contact out. And his contact tells him, and this part I was a little, this is your first idea that the organization this guy works for is called Cobra. He doesn't say Cobra here, but he does say, Chuckles says, sorry about your man. And the contact says, he was a nameless viper, existing only to strike at our enemies. He served his purpose. So, the foot soldiers in Cobra are called Vipers. Mm-hmm. And they have different specialties.
Okay.
Desert Vipers, Televipers, like alley Vipers who, sell drugs, I guess. I don't know. They all have different like areas of expertise.
This is very 80s cartoon.
Yeah, very much so. They really thought kids were dumb. And since I watched this show, I very well might have been. But I like that here they kind of give a reason. Like, oh, we call them Vipers because they exist only to strike at our enemies. Like, I'm like, well, hey, okay, you got a Cobra motif. You have a reason these guys are called Vipers. But I'm also like, why are you going to sign up with this guy? He's basically just saying, like, oh, that guy was expendable, but you're not expendable. I like you. And I'm like, I bet you told that guy that dead in the bar back there, you liked him too.
Yeah. And here Chuckles reflects that this is the worst job interview ever.
Yeah. He also says, you may hear from me again. And Chuckles says, whatever, next time I pick the place.
I feel like this is not the first or last job interview that Chuckles has had that has had a body count at the end of it. And it's not a fun kind of body count either.
No, it is a bad one. It is not my first key party. It is my first murder fest.
Right.
And Chuckles, apparently, old hat to him. Even though we will find out this was all planned and that those G.I. Joe soldiers were not actually killed. He did kill people after that. Because once he left, they were out of, they were just killing the army in that part of the world.
Right.
So now he's sitting by the radio, hoping they'll call, which is, oh man, I'm getting real stilted girlfriend vibes. Like, I hope they call. I hope they call. They don't. Chuckles goes to sleep sad, but gets woke up and beat up.
I like the parts where he gets hit the best.
Well, I got great news for you. This is not the last time he will get beat up. He gets a bag over his head, and he smells the French cigarettes that, like I said earlier, he does a lot of like observational detective work, and so he smells the French cigarettes, and he's like, oh, it's this guy. The same guy that did the interview. So I know who's kidnapping me now. And that means they know I'm G.I. Joe. And this is the first us as the audience find out that he's G.I. Joe. At least if you didn't read the cover of the trade paperback.
if you got one of those like nice little like surprise comics like they do with books. Yeah. Have you ever seen the blind book date?
Yes.
I fucking love those. Those are so cute. It's a wonderful idea. But yeah, if you did that with the comic book and you just randomly blindly
explain
pick
the blind
one
book
out.
date for people who do not, because I think we should get that idea out there.
Oh, well, okay. So like we went to a place a couple weekends ago, and they had this little. It's like a little almost like a fruit basket type of deal. Mm-hmm. So you get like a little basket, and
not the anime.
Although it is a really good. We'll have to read that. Okay. Anyways, yeah. Back on track. So it came with like a little. It comes with like a little mug, like you can put like hot chocolate or something in it and then you get a book, and the book is covered in wrapping, but on the outside it has like mystery or like what kind of book it's, and then it has like not a summary, but like maybe like a handful of tropes. Like maybe this is a romance novel. It's enemies to lovers, but that's all you'll get. And it's basically just a blind date with a book type of situation. And it's the cutest little thing. I enjoy it.
It is very cute. I've seen a lot of like local bookstores have those little things set up. Support your local bookstores.
Yes.
And your local comic shops.
Yes.
So he's like, oh no, they found out I'm G.I. Joe. And that is when us, the audience, finds out that he's G.I. Joe, or was G.I. Joe, as we will discover. So we immediately go to a flashback of him getting kicked out of G.I. Joe, which kind of gives truth to the lie that he's in G.I. Joe. And, his I don't know, his higher up, his manager, whatever you call him in the military.
Manager.
His shift manager in the military. Calls him out and basically says, look, you're kind of an asshole and you don't belong in this outfit. And what he says here is, we do the work of soldiers here and you're a mercenary, but out there in the world I have work for mercenaries too.
Alright, now this is where I'm going to log my first complaint about this actual thing that is happening here.
Okay.
I fucking hate when they do this shit, because they spend all these times, they spend this whole little back and forth calling him like he's a wild card and he doesn't listen and all this, and outside of telling a few bad jokes, they do nothing to establish any of these characteristics.
Yeah.
He doesn't, like, He
says, you're a train wreck off the field. You can read people, but you won't read a brief. You're all gut, no discipline. You know how to survive, but a soldier needs more than that. Like, no examples.
Nothing!
No, like, you have 3 DWIs from last time you were on shore leave or whatever.
We're 23 pages in. And it establishes all of this work that he has done. Like he moved whatever arms in one country and helped do.
He worked with the Yakuza. He worked with the Mexican,
mafia
Colombian drug traders. Yeah,
they have established nowhere that he is a wild card, but they tell you that he is, and you're just supposed to take their word for it
because of one smart ass comment during a briefing.
Yes.
Yeah.
I fucking hate that shit.
I will say this though, Chuckles is surprised as you are. Like, Chuckles also didn't expect to get kicked out because. Yeah. And a few pages later, they straight up say that he's a sociopath. Yeah. So when they finally meet up with him, they say, I'm only asking you to do this because you're a punk and a screw-up and probably a borderline sociopath. You'd end up doing it anyway. I'd prefer you do it for me. So the idea being that if they did not recruit him, he was still going to end up as working for a Colombian drug lord, just as a Colombian drug lord. Like, I feel like he is...
But they could have established that in some way, shape, or form, and they just don't.
Well, it's also, I don't buy it, because he seems to have a, honest to God, unearned loyalty to America and these ideals, to the point that when they perform invasive surgery on him without his permission, he just shrugs and goes, well, I'm doing it for America. Like, I do not think he would have ended up as
Colombian drug lord?
No. He probably would have ended up like fucking Dog the Bounty Hunter. Like, he would have had his own TV show. He would have had his own TV show, like Cops, where he went around collecting bounties on people. Like, that's where I see Chuckles. He'd have ended up at
McDonald's. He'd have been fine. Whatever. Like, I don't... He'd have ended up at McDonald's, like,
and
being
then
one
at
of
the
those
January
people...
6th riots.
Oh, God. He'd be one of those people at McDonald's that, like, makes those little quippy jokes that aren't really funny and then laughs at them.
Yeah. I kind of feel bad for those people, though.
I mean, I feel bad for them. I feel worse for them than I do for him.
Well, you would... It would be the same, because in the 2-minute interaction where you're getting your kid's meal, you don't know that this guy... anything else about this guy except that he tries to tell bad jokes to make the monotony of working a 9 to 5 or, like, survivable. As someone who also... Well, I work some more... A 9 to 9er. Like, I get it. I also make bad jokes to get through the day. So when people make bad jokes to me, I laugh. Because God bless them. And then he gets introduced to his contact, his partner. And he brings out his sexism, like... And racism. Like, this is really not the only time we're going to get these. So if you think this is a one-off so you can show him growing later,
it's not.
You're reading the wrong thing.
It's not.
No.
Yeah.
So they talk about you're going to be teamed up with someone whose code name is Jinx. It's like, Jinx, are we sure that's a good name for an operation where if something goes wrong, I get captured and tortured and killed? And he's like, not the operation. That's your contact. That's her name. It's like, she's a girl? And at this point, Jinx walks out and says, woman. And he goes, Chinese. She goes, Chinese American. And he says, fine, as long as you're not driving me anywhere. And then she kicks the shit out of him.
Like I said, I like when he gets hit.
This is the kick we all wanted. Like, this is probably, if it wasn't for the last 20-some pages of this trade paperback, this would be my favorite panel. It's where Jinx kicks him in the face.
It's a nice kick. I enjoyed it.
It's such a good kick. Like, you see blood squirting out of his nose like he's a manga character that just saw a woman's underwear. Like, he is gone. Like,
all right, I like that. That's cute.
Yeah, he is. But then he starts... this is the closest thing to a compliment I can give him. He starts realizing that she's good at her job, actually useful, actually helpful.
All things he maybe should have considered prior to being a sexist, racist moron.
Well, you say that, but by being a sexist, racist moron, Yeah, he totally gets to hit that because, man, when you combine adrenaline, two good-looking people,
is he good-looking?
And a contrived action movie plot.
Okay, the contrived action movie plot is doing most of the work here because he's not that cute.
I mean, he's good-looking in this world because every girl he meets wants to sleep with him, so it's not his fucking charisma. So
he's not that good-looking, though.
You can't tell. Everybody looks the same in this. That's like looking at 4 stick figures and picking one of the stick figures out and saying, that's a good-looking stick figure. Again, with apologies to Antonio Fuso.
He ain't listening, and you know what? Some people need some criticism on occasion.
Yeah. Oh, no, I'm not saying he doesn't need criticism. Believe me. He needs criticism.
But I really did like Jinx for a hot minute. And
yeah. I mean, I continued to like her. Like, man, if I stopped liking people because they made bad relationship choices...
Well, no,
First of all, I'd hate myself. And second of all, I'd hate almost everyone I knew.
Well, I wasn't speaking about the relationship choices, although, honey, you can do better.
That was when I kind of was like, oh,
I was actually talking more about the fact that she was indistinguishable from the other girl. Yeah. So I kind of, like... My likeness for her lulled out right up until she died, and then I just hated Chuckles more.
Yeah, understandably. But we also get more of him committing, like, doing bad things, but we don't get the details. And I think that is one of the things that they don't give us to try and not make Chuckles hateable. It's like, well, if we actually show him gunning down children, it's probably going to be even harder to like this guy, and it's already hard. So
we're not doing him any favors.
Yeah,
here, so let's just go ahead.
So we're just going to say I spent months doing terrible things with terrible people. I went deep, sometimes really deep. Most times, Jinx was the only sane person I'd talk to for weeks. She was my strength. So, again, if nothing else, this is a story of someone completely isolated, like, from everyone and everything, through his own actions and his own choices, but it's still, like, this crippling loneliness that he has, that comes back over and over again.
Yeah.
And we've talked about the shootout that we had just seen in the bar, and how they're going to have, in Hollywood, they're called quibs, like these fake explosions, the blood explosions, and he's going to be shooting blanks, etc., etc.
Yeah, you got to make it look good.
And there's a funny scene where she says, whoever you're aiming at will go off. Your new shoes, your new boss sees you kill someone, you become employee of the month. Scarlet and Heavy Duty will be wearing them. I'm sorry, it was not Roadblock, it was Heavy Duty.
That's not better.
Well, he doesn't speak in rhyme, so it's a little better.
He doesn't speak at all either
No
way.
one speaks. None of the Joes speak in this except Chuckles and Jinx and Hawk. Like, no one else talks. And Chuckles says, not Duke. And Jinx says, come on, nobody shoots Duke. And Chuckles says, a man can dream. This is only funny if you used to watch the cartoon. Because Duke was like, he's basically the Superman of G.I. Joe. He was the goody two-shoes that, like, kind of turned your stomach every time he'd appear. Even as a kid, I was like, this guy's too saccharine. He's like, ugh, he's so sweet and righteous. Like, I can't stand him. Of course, I was a kid that liked the bad guys, so not super surprising. But, yeah, what an asshole Duke was. And I really wish he'd got shot with the quib. But, que sera, sera. We didn't get to shoot Duke. And there's a very funny scene here where they're talking. This is after we flash back to the present, and Chuckles gets his bag taken off, and it turns out they don't know he's with G.I. Joe. There's a very funny scene where two guys in suits are talking to him. One of them says, and the sleeper awakens. Nice to finally meet you, Mr. Chuckles. Seems I owe you a debt of gratitude. And he says, please, just Chuckles. Mr. Chuckles was my father. I did lull at that. That was funny. Occasionally, Chuckles earns his code name. Very occasionally. Most of his jokes are your dad jokes, but that one landed for me. They basically tell him they like his work. He rescued his guy, and he's going to show them a video, and he's like, "Oh, corporate training," and they're like, "Yeah," after a fashion. And Chuckles calms down because now he knows. Whew, they don't know who I am. Great, but the wall of TVs where he thought he was going to watch a video actually slide apart, and we get our first shot of the Cobra emblem, which as a kid I thought was cool as fuck. It's just a red like Cobra outline. It's very simple, but like with the hood.
Yeah, it is cool.
It's very simple, but it works, and it's very recognizable, like the Umbrella Corporation logo from Resident Evil. Like you see it, and you immediately know up to no good. These people are up to no good.
Yeah, yeah.
And we also get our first picture of soldier in uniform. Cobra really likes to put their guys in very showy outfits. Very, I don't know what you would call it, but their military is flashy. They got a real flashy military. They're flashy. And as kids, of course, they're trying to sell toys. So that all makes sense.
We got our very colorful stormtroopers.
Yes. Yeah, they're very...
they're just red.
Yeah, they're...
It's like when the Daleks all got their own... Like, they all got the color, like the different shells all got colors.
It's the red Daleks.
They're red Daleks.
Yeah, or the Emperor's Royal Guard, if for other Star Wars nerds out there, because they are...
I literally only know the Stormtroopers because I've never watched Star Wars.
Yeah, that's definitely going to be a Patreon tier at some point. That's going to be whatever I watch
Star Wars.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I feel like if nothing else encourages people to give it to the Patreon, that will, because there are people that find it offensive. You have not seen
and
Star
that's
Wars
why
yet.
I haven't seen it.
Yes.
Be offended.
Yeah,
it makes my soul happy.
Fucking troll. All right. So they're in the Balkans now. They've moved around a bit, and they're at a gentleman's club, which he badmouths because he's like, "Oh, the Balkans have the worst gentlemen's clubs in the world," and like
he's very unhappy.
Well, he is very America-centric. Like, man, everywhere he goes that's not America, he is pissed off about it. And I don't, first of all, you'd know Chuckles, and second of all, I think that is it reminds me of somebody who goes somewhere for like a week, and then they come back and start telling you about all of that place. Like they went to Madrid for a week, and they come back and be like, "Let me tell you how people in Spain are. Let me tell you how the restaurants in Spain are. Let me tell you how the strip clubs in Spain are." And I'm like, How many strip clubs in the Balkans have you been to, Chuckles? And also, how many strip clubs around the world have you been to that you could say the ones in the Balkans are the worst? But whatevs.
Yeah.
So he picks out the prettiest girl in the bar. She picks him out. And it turns out it's Jinx in her undercover
this gets real tired real quick.
Persona.
His only weakness bullshit that he keeps doing.
His only weakness is a beautiful girl because he's an alpha male. He went to the Andrew Tate School of Alpha Mailing, and so...
Well, like Andrew Tate, he should probably also be in jail.
If this comic was admissible in court and he was a real person, he would be. A lot of crime. Although I guess he'd get pardoned by the U.S. government because, hey, they're crimes for the U.S. of A., so they don't count.
So, I wonder about this part because he's making out with Jinx.
Yep.
And the dude apparently looks into the room, I guess, to watch him make out with Jinx.
Curiosity, yeah.
But she was wearing a blonde wig, and then she takes the blonde wig off, and I just does this dude, is he not aware, or?
I don't think girls in strip clubs are in wigs. Is that unheard of?
But if you're in the club with the wig on, and that's your whole thing, you would imagine that you would have left it on. Get a wig does not come on and off that easy to start with. So I'm just, I'm taking.
I don't know enough about wigs. I feel way out of my depth here, so I will bow to your wisdom on this.
As the lone female in the room, allow me to tell you that this is not how this works.
Okay.
So if you put this on to hide your identity,
yes,
which I'm assuming is what she was doing.
She might have just been enhancing roleplay, but sure.
Then taking it off to make out while someone's watching you seems like a bad idea. And is maybe why she gets shot in the head later.
All right. Jinx, bad at her job. You heard it here first, folks. Or maybe living up to her nickname. In the cartoon and the earlier comics, the reason she was named Jinx, she was first of all, she was a ninja. She dressed all in red like a badass ninja. She was my favorite of all the ninjas on the good guys side. Okay. I thought she was fucking awesome. But she was a jinx. Like, bad luck just happened when she was around. So she's this really awesome trained ninja, but no one wanted to ever take her on missions because she was bad luck. And it was actually a much cooler personality than what they gave her here. So, yeah, come on. You should have, although I guess it could be argued she was a bit of a jinx because, man, things don't end great for her. And so they make out. He's like, hey, I'm on the edge of something big, but I haven't got you any information yet. And she's like, well, we're done here then. And she also tells him that this is our last meet. It's just the SR receiver from now on, which is the first we've heard of the SR receiver, but we're getting ready to get another flashback to explain that. Yep. And he's basically says she waited till we were in public to tell me, damn, she's smart. Meaning, to my understanding, that if she had told him while they were in the private dance room, he would have, like a small child, been like, but I want to see you again. I don't care about the mission. I don't care if you're in danger. I don't really want to see you again. I like boobs.
So, he's a bitch and a slut.
He's a little bit of a bitch and a slut. Yeah. Sorry, Chuckles. But you're a bitch and a slut. And then we go back to months ago before he went undercover. And once again, why are you even working with the U.S. government here? It turns out that while he was under, they put a SR receiver in his head so that he can send and receive messages.
Although this Nurse Frankenstein bit did make me laugh. I will admit that one made me
But even that is sexist. Nurses don't do brain surgery, asshole. She's a doctor. But she did have a Nurse Frankenstein hairdo. I will say that. She's got like this big poof of hair out and behind her head.
I'm not saying he wasn't sexist, but that one...
It was a good line.
It made me laugh.
Yeah. And honestly, if there's a time you're allowed to be sexist, maybe it's to the person that just performed illegal surgery on you. Possibly. If you're going to throw that out, maybe right after you're someone fucking... violated your body without your consent might be the time.
Okay, that is fair. His body was violated without his consent. However, I do want to say that maybe they shouldn't be performing surgery on him on top of the fact that outside of him not wanting it or not asking for it or agreeing to it or whatever. Yeah. Also, he doesn't have that many brain cells to start with. Maybe we shouldn't be damaging the ones that he does.
Well, and I like this little bit of, I'm going to say realism because I don't know enough to not know if it's realism or not. But I like that they put in bits of metal in there as well. So if this thing is detected, they'll say, oh, well, this is just scrap metal from an injury from my youth. But you're right. For every bit of metal they put in there, they probably scraped out some brain cells that he
don't have that many needed. Yeah.
He desperately needed. So it turns out he needs to, like, bite on tinfoil to make his reports. Because if they went modern day, there are things to
it would be
pick
detectable.
It up. Yeah. So they went old school. We flash to the present, and he is driving, he's making deals. He's driving around a dude named Skeleton. That's his contact.
These things hurt me.
Skeleton. Mr. Skeleton. Skeletor's younger brother who got into terrorism. It's sad. That whole family's just bad.
Skeletor's younger brother is Skeleton.
Skeletor. Come on. I will tell you something.
This family had a naming convention.
I will tell you something very funny.
The youngest brother, Bones.
There is a comic. I don't think it's canon in the current He-Man universe, but there is an offshoot where Skeletor and Evelyn had a child. Guess that child's name.
Bad Bones.
That's good. That's better than what they came up with. You cannot imagine a name worse than this.
Okay.
Skeletine. First of all, did you call him Skeleton at birth? Because it's only going to be a good nickname, and I say good in the most sarcastic tone, from 13 to 19. If this skeleton person lives to be 100, that nickname will work for 6 years of their life. And then Skeleton will be a 70-year-old man in a skeleton old folks home, having to explain why his parents named him Skeleton. I really want to cover that at some point. Just the issue where we are introduced to Skeleton. Maybe a one-shot for one of our short episodes or something. Good old Skeleton.
Bad Bones would have been a better name.
Bad Bones would have been so good. Actually, I wish this guy in this comic was named Bad Bones instead of Skeleton. Chuckles is driving him around. This is your first shot, I believe, of
Nah, this
Tomax?
is the dude. Is this not the same dude that was in that opened the door? Isn't that him?
Yeah. Okay, so you're right, yeah. Not our first shot, but I believe this is the same guy. Again, hard to tell faces apart in this. But he's saying a bunch of crap that Chuckles isn't interested in, which kind of blows my mind, because Chuckles is also supposed to be gathering intel. He's like, yeah, I have to stand around overhearing parts of dirty deals too complicated to be interesting. Like, well, you should still maybe pay attention and report them back to people smarter than you who can decipher whether that is interesting or not. I imagine when he makes his reports, there's stuff like, yeah, dude was talking, I don't know, I think he said something was happening in Europe. I kind of zoned out.
You know what? Maybe this is why they say he's a bad soldier.
Is it time for extraction
Maybe I
yet?
need to eat my words.
He literally did say he couldn't read a brief. Or wouldn't read a brief. Maybe he can't read a brief. Maybe
this is the Alex Jones school of reading headlines.
He reads the headlines.
And then making up your own story to go with it.
A combination of too many head injuries and ADHD has prevented this man from being able to pay attention for more than 15 seconds. He's working like 23-hour shifts, and eventually he makes a mistake because he's sleep deprived, he's not paying attention, and he barely survives a run-in that gets his pal Skeleton killed. Pal being a loose term, he kind of hates him. But he gets away, Skeleton gets killed, and he goes to report to Tomax. Hey, sorry about that. And Tomax says, again, these people are so expendable. How he doesn't realize. Also expendable. You, Chuckles.
I feel like this crime syndicate would have a hard time keeping people.
Yeah.
Like, this is not the first time that they've said that this person that we spent all this time training and working with was fine. It's fine that he's dead. They don't matter.
Yeah.
I feel like this is a bad attitude to have.
Well, he straight up says this was Skeleton's test to keep his job and yours to see if you deserved it instead. And Chuckles is like, what about your car? And he says, oh, I hated that car. I'm getting an Escalade. Which, again, a funny line. Tomax is also funny. Chuckles did not appreciate how funny Tomax is.
This is fair. Although, again, Chuckles working with, like, 0 brain cells. I don't think he gets humor.
And Chuckles says, with all due respect, sir, it was clear Skeletor. I did it right there. Skeleton had little combat experience, and those attackers were just jacked up locals with no real chance of laying a hand on me. And Tomax says, yeah, well, if it'd been an etiquette test, it might have gone differently, mightn't it? Again, Tomax, funny guy. I like him.
Yeah, he has his moments.
Yeah. And incidentally, there will be an etiquette test. Dinner tonight. Wear a suit. You're in the family now. So.
Not that means anything.
Yeah. He's moved up, but it doesn't feel like he's moved up. And I don't know if this is intentional, but they're at a meeting now of high rollers. Mm-hmm. And this dude looks like Lex Luthor. I don't know.
Well, you know, we're giving the artist shit, and I'm going to keep doing that because on page 44, this is not a face.
No.
This is not.
Actually, that is a face of a Dick Tracy villain. That is Flat Top from Dick Tracy.
That I made a note of how badly drawn that was. Like, that got on my nerves.
That is 90% forehead. And his head is square?
Yep.
This is at the bottom of page 44. weird. Yeah, so he's at a meeting of bigwigs now, which is so exciting for him. A lady walks down the stairs. Me and Cecilia both thought it was
I thought
Jinx.
that's not Jinx.
No, this is not Jinx. This is the highest, the guy above Tomax's lady, supposedly. And Chuckles, of course, immediately falls for her because what's his one weakness, Cecilia?
The lack of brain cells.
It's that when he sees a girl, all the blood runs away from his brain into his penis. That is his one weakness.
His one weakness is the fact that his zipper comes down.
Yes, that is his weakness and everyone else's loss. And on page 46, I wrote, why can't rich people just have dinner? Like, why is it always got to be such a fucking show?
This whole thing where they talk about like they got this weird little
Apparently
tiny
it's a
dead
real
bird.
Thing. I
Is
looked
it a
up.
real thing?
It is a real thing.
That is gross and unsettling. Your food's not supposed to hurt you.
Yeah, let me describe this for you. Actually, let me let Tomax describe this for you. It's a sensual delicacy. You chew the hen's bones, puncture your gums, and your own blood seasons the meat and complements the bitter entrails. Traditionally, a napkin is placed over your head as you eat it to prevent the aroma from escaping. Though some say you do it to hide from God. I say decadence need never be hidden, and the strong need never fear wrath. And Chuckles immediately throws up.
If it's this simple to hide from God, all you need is a little rag over your
little
head.
Hood. You just gotta have a hood.
I guess maybe that's why the KKK wear hoods.
Mm-hmm. Hiding from God.
They're hiding from God.
While doing his will, according to them.
Well.
Yeah. Figure out that dichotomy.
I would rather not.
Chuckles gets sick after eating this gross undercooked bird. I do not blame him. And this lady comes in.
I so thought this was Jinx.
Yeah, as did I. But it is not Jinx. And he is smitten. And then Tomax comes in, ushers her out, and says, hey, and this is one of the things that really made me like Tomax. He's like, well, everyone's here. I want you to go to this bank. And he's like, well, I can't do a bank heist. And he's like, oh, no. I want you to destroy all the money.
Yeah. No, I actually made a note of burning money. Now, this is a plan I can get behind.
Yeah, this man he wants you to blow up the money. He's like, a heist? My dear boy, do I look destitute to you? He's
buying an Escalade.
This is not, I'm getting an Escalade, bro. This is not an American gangster film. We do not steal money. I want you to destroy it.
Yep.
And sure enough, he does. And as he does, he says he tries not to think about the people that were in there. Don't think about the people inside. Think about the mission. The mission is everything. And you get a scene of Tomax watching the smoke from up in his high tower. And there's someone standing behind him who you don't see the face of, who I assume is his boss, the big high.
I just thought it was a bodyguard, to be honest.
Also known as not Jinx's boyfriend. Yeah, it could be. And then he sees not Jinx hanging out outside, and it's raining. And he said, all around us, the rain hisses like a snake. Another Cobra reference. Kind of lets you know that this girl might be trouble. That is called foreshadowing, my friends.
It's my only weakness. I feel like he's got plenty of weaknesses at this point. His inability to read a brief.
The only weakness he's aware of.
So, actually, because...
He's not very bright, though. So
this is actually the first time I was like, so is this the same girl who punched him in the face, or is he just a whore?
Yeah.
I am not sure at this point. Also... She was mocking him for him believing that she was waiting for him, but she's also just standing out in the rain for no reason. So, like,
well, not for no reason. It reminds her of Vietnam, and she was dancing in it because she is from a musical. I think she danced out of a musical and into this action movie.
I feel like he's an idiot.
Oh, he absolutely is. But any port in a storm, apparently, Chuckles. So
they have sex.
Yeah.
Because the boy's a whore.
Yeah.
And she's awake, but he's asleep.
Yeah.
And that doesn't bode well.
No, it absolutely does not. And I did not catch that she was awake and he was asleep.
Yep.
He was like, oh, he's at peace. Good. And it's a very good scene because he's like, talks about how every night he's haunted by all this horrible shit he's done up to this point. And he's like, but not tonight, because tonight I got laid. So I fell right asleep. But, it's a scene of him asleep, but her on his chest awake. And that is also foreshadowing of what will come later. Next page, he's blowing up a train. And he says, I go down to assess the recovery team so I don't have to take part in the executions. So he is in deep. So fucking deep. And as much as I hate him, I also feel for him. Because he is having the questions that we are all having. He straight up asks, I send in my reports. The orders are always the same. Continue to observe. Memorize names and locations. Do not break cover. No timetable for extraction. I can't see what, if any good, I'm doing here. There were 11 people on that train. And it's just a picture of him in the dark, like, rubbing his temples.
Here's the thing. The start of this made such a big deal about what a loose cannon who doesn't follow orders he is, just to show him not being a loose cannon who does follow orders.
Yes. He follows bad orders from bad people really well, which is surprising. This is a really big...
I dislike it whenever a story tells you who someone is without ever showing you being that.
Yeah.
Like that, it made such a big deal out of how reckless and dangerous and unstable he is, only for him to never be any of those things.
No, he is none of them things.
I hate that shit.
He follows orders to a fault, really, if we'll see.
Yeah.
They find a scientist, or they're looking for a scientist in one of the convoys. And one of the people is a suicide bomber and blows Chuckles to high hell. So he's in the hospital, and he realizes that he can no longer get messages on his head radio.
Yep.
He is
no orders to give or receive.
Now, which means extraction now probably impossible. Knowing what to do is now completely up to him, and he's shown he is not good at that logic.
He can decide who he's going to have sex with. That's about the only thing he can do by himself.
There's another scene that I now noticed, because Cecilia pointed out the previous one, of him sleeping and her laying on him, but eyes wide open.
Yep.
Like, Chuckles, you poor fool. So, the day he gets out of the hospital, he immediately gets called into the boss man's office, Tomax's office. And Tomax fires him and gives him a new job. So it's another promotion. He's moving up in the world.
This soup with a fork thingy, that made me laugh. That one was funny.
Yeah, Chuckles is talking about the people who have more clearance than him. He's like, I know less about what's going on around here than Simon. And I've seen that guy eat soup with a fork. And Tomax is like, there's that famous mouth I've heard so much about. The squeaky wheel gets the grease, yes? Okay, you're fired. But he's not actually firing, he's reassigning him. And the next page we see he's now in Dubai, still doing horrible things. It opens with him just opening fire on people at about a foot range, which is not how that works. But there's like 8 people just standing a foot apart, shooting machine guns at each other, and somehow...
But it makes for a very nice panel.
It's a beautiful 2-page panel, yeah. See, we're not all negative, Antonio. That's a good panel you got there.
Yep.
We see him torturing... Well, pre-torture. He's walking towards a guy with a car battery... clamps.
Yep.
So we know what's happening. We see him training troops, and he keeps noticing that his lady, again in quotation marks, every week she goes into a meeting with the boss man. Now this is the guy over his boss.
So is he technically the one trying to sleep his way up the ladder here? Because that's an interesting direction to go.
I think so. I think he is trying to use her to get... In fact, there's a scene right here
I just had that thought. Like,
Yeah.
he's technically the one trying to sleep his way to the top, which is a fun inversion of a common trope.
You know what? I did not
I will
notice
give
that,
people
but
credit for that.
That is exactly what he's doing. Because right now, he's laying the guilt trip out on her to try and get her to put a good word in for him.
Yep.
He's like, yeah, I'm still living in this bunker. I'm playing army, man. I could do that in Europe and not have sand in my crack. And she's like, I never took you for a whiner. I know you're not dumb. You know something huge is coming and you want to be a part of it. But you have to show some initiative. You've been sleepwalking through your duties here. We all see it. To be accepted, you have to want it. And Chuckles is like, all right, initiative. You motherfuckers want to see some initiative. All right. So, before that, he gets woken up in the middle of the night by Simon, the fork with the soup with the fork fella.
Yeah.
And he's like, hey, we caught a spy. And he opens up the doors, and it's Jinx.
And this is where I realized that Jinx and the other girl
Not
were
the
two
same
separate people. Yeah.
And Jinx either immediately makes up a cover story, or it's one she's had in her back pocket in case she got called.
Yep.
Chuckles isn't sure which. But he's trying to figure out a way to get her out of this, and he's like, oh, there is no way. We're both going to die here.
Yep.
Which I almost want to give him credit, because he's like, okay, I'm going to die in this shootout trying to save her. But she, while staying in character, because Jinx is a badass, talks him into killing her and continuing the mission.
Yep.
And
I don't think she really had to work that hard, though.
Well, I mean, she changes his mind quick, but I don't know if that's...
Well, he also says in the very next page, after he pulls the fucking trigger, his first thought is, well, at least it wasn't me.
Yeah.
And, like, I mean, maybe he thinks himself the type of person
He feels very guilty that at least it wasn't me. Like, that panel of thank God it's not me is him, like, alone on a chair, like, crying, but...
I don't think she had to work that hard. I don't think she had to work as hard as maybe she should have had to.
I mean, he does straight up say that we're gonna die in here.
Until she gives him an out.
Yeah.
And he kind of...
I can't get her out. We're both going to die in here. I can take that Simon maybe. Even the two guardsmen, but there's no way I can get out of this bunker. She knows it. And then she starts talking, and yeah, he shoots her. I don't know if it's she couldn't convince, like it was easy to convince him, or his he's just very easy to motive to change the mind of. Like whoever talks to him last will change his mind to whatever they're thinking. What makes him just a horrible soldier?
You know.
But
after he kills her, he does seem to actually get a little bit further.
Well, this is why I do think he was genuine, because after he shoots her, he's like, okay, I no longer care if I live or die. I'm taking him down myself. I can't wait for extraction. I can't wait for the Joe team to show up. I'm doing this on my own. And if I die, so be it. So that's why I think that there was some genuine...
Grief makes you reckless.
Yeah. And reckless he is. So he ends up showing up where...
He gets it, like, I guess they buy a little bit more that he's actually invested.
Yeah, well, he shows up at a camp. He's like, I saw this on your itinerary and staked it out this morning. I disabled 3 hidden recording devices and killed a man in the basement of a structure C where he didn't respond to either Arabic or Urdu. And the lady he's talking to, who may or may not be the girl, like, could be a different lady. I have no idea. She's like, well, we owe you one, thanks. He's like, not just that. I want in. All the way in. I'm ready now. So he, as his not Jinx girlfriend said, you gotta take the initiative. So he did. He went to a place where he knew they were going. He disabled all these threats without being asked. And so he gets a quote-unquote upgrade. He is now one of the heads of what's called the BAT department. BATs are Battle Android Trooper, B-A-T. And I liked bats in the original cartoon, and they served a function. In the 80s and early 90s, and probably even till today, although I'm not as up-to-date on cartoons as I used to be, you had people with very dangerous weapons. Mm-hmm. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles had katanas and sais. Like, G.I. Joe had guns. You couldn't show them using these weapons on things that were alive. Yes. So you always had to introduce robots.
Yeah, just like in Disney, you can't see blood.
Exactly. So Cobra had bats so that G.I. Joe could mow something down with those big guns they had. Because every time they blew up a ship, you had to show a parachute of a guy parachuting out. Because otherwise you had a corpse on your hand.
Yeah.
Every time they forgot to animate someone getting out of a vehicle before it blew up, I got excited because I was like, oh, they actually killed one. They actually got one that time.
Oh, jeez. You know, I was just recently rewatching like a clip of Pocahontas, and I just recently realized that Kocoum gets shot in that movie.
Oh, shit.
But they never show any blood.
Huh. Just like when they shoot Bambi's mom. Disney, no blood.
Yep.
It's kind of a very odd... all the stuff they do show, like, it's a weird thing to be like, no
blood.
That's the line. Can't show any blood. But yeah, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, in the comic, the Foot was actually a group of human ninjas. In the cartoon, they were turned into robot ninjas so that katanas could chop off their heads and sais could go through their eyeballs and kids could still sleep at night. Even He-Man in the Masters of the Universe, Skeletor had these little robot bots he would send out every third or fourth episode for He-Man to slice up with his sword because he had a sword and he couldn't use it on anybody. So bats are the G.I. Joe version of that. And it was neat to see them make a little cameo here. And also, it was very funny because they talk about how they just do not fucking work. Like, they tried and they tried. But Battle Android Troopers are nothing but a fantasy. Which is funny because this is trying to be a more realistic take. And it's like, yeah, of course they wouldn't fucking work. Like, we aren't there yet, folks. Android Troopers in 2009? I don't think so. He also meets a nice nerdy guy that he is definitely also going to kill with C4 explosives.
Yep.
Yeah. What a psycho. And then Simon's talking about, they're in the mess hall getting lunch, and Simon's talking about how he shot Jinx. And he's like, but he's just bang right between their eyes. Ha 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 ha. He too much big shot to eat with us now. I know he's a crazy killer. But he's crazy, but I love that guy.
Aww.
And Chuckles is like, Jesus Christ. What have I got myself into? So we see how big the operation is. We actually get a couple of shots of vehicles that will mean something if you're a G.I. Joe fan. On page 79, second panel, you get a shot of a Hiss tank, which was a very coolly designed tank. Not really realistic because it has a huge glass dome on the front, which I imagine... Even if it's bulletproof glass, that's a weak spot for a tank.
You know what? It might be.
But man, it looked cool. We also get a shot of the Firebat planes, which were very cool planes that came out of the middle of the Terrordrome, or Technodrome. I always forget which one's G.I. Joe and which one's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
So this is actually, here's what Chuckles has figured out so far.
Yes.
Hatchet men like him or Simon get sent out on horrible mercenary missions to blow up federal reserves.
Missions. We bring Jesus to these small communities with bullets.
I mean...
Mercenary. Although missionary may be a Freudian slip.
Or to break maniacs out of prison or assassinate archdukes or whatever. Basically whatever it takes to destabilize developing nations. Then, after we've stirred up all kinds of mayhem, Cobra comes in under the guise of God knows how many shell companies, and we hire out our private army, our Crimson Guard. The more chaos we cause, the less faith people have in their own military, and the more guardsmen they hire. And soon, they're the supreme military, and they're the nation that they set him up in, basically.
So when you say this is too realistic, what do you mean?
Cobra is basically the U.S. government. That is so great.
We destabilize their government because they're getting all communisty. And then we send out our boys, and things go so much better. Mm-hmm. Then we get a couple pages of the bats not working, which I, again, think is fucking hilarious.
Yep.
They send them out, and they just start shooting each other.
They're basically walking bombs.
Yeah.
That's all they really are.
And also, because Chuckles no longer has a reason to live, the sex with his girl is no longer good. Both of them hate it now, and they're just going through the motions.
They could always just not have sex. I
do not know what that means, Cecilia. Now you're talking crazy. Don't talk crazy. This podcast is not for your crazy talk.
You're so lucky I like you.
I know. You know what? I think that every time we do this podcast. And Chuckles decides it's time. Time to go in and bust some fucking heads. So he says, I need to get in to see X. So X is the name of the guy over Tomax. Never been revealed.
Mm-hmm.
You only see him in shadow. And his old pal Simon is telling him he can't get in. And Chuckles does not seem to want to take no for an answer. And the next shot you see is Simon flying through the window where Chuckles has chucked him.
Yep.
Yeah. And he walks in on Tomax and tells him, yeah, you get up. You get up. Get up or die in that chair. And Tomax says that this is an attempt to get a raise. There are easier... Chuckles grabs him in a chokehold. Man, Chuckles, a lot of CH alliteration here. Chokeholds, chucking through windows, etc., etc. So, Chuckles puts a gun to his head and takes him in to see the boss.
Mm-hmm.
Before that, though, there is a very funny scene where Tomax is like, look, I admire your initiative going up the ladder for this, but he's not going to give you the raise either. And Chuckles says, stop talking or one goes in your kneecaps. I'm like, oh, suddenly Chuckles doesn't like jokes anymore, huh? You don't like jokes suddenly, Chuckles. It's not funny anymore.
Chuckles doesn't like jokes. There's a line that writes itself.
Mm-hmm. So they walk in, and apologies, Miss Leeton. Normally I'd have the decency to knock, but... And Chuckles is like, Erica. So apparently Chuckles knew her as Erica. Her name is Erica Leeton. I guess if you want her full name. I'm not sure I've given it this entire podcast.
I don't think they
It's
gave
always
it.
been not Jinx until this
Jinx.
point. Yeah. And you see a shadowed figure in a chair. Chuckles is like, turn around, blah, blah, blah. You turn around right now. I want to see your face. I want you to see my face. I want you to know my name. And he turns around, and surprise, surprise, dude looks just like his boss.
It's always twins.
Yes. And mine is... Oh, I know your name, Chuckles. Mine is Tomax. That man there is my brother, Xamot. I loved these two. I loved them in the comic. I loved them in the cartoon. They are such good bad guys.
Yeah.
They're identical twins.
Yep.
And the first time you meet them in the cartoon, they're in business suits. And Cobra has this company called Extensive Enterprises, which shows up in this comic as well. And G.I. Joe goes like, hey, you guys are a front. And G.I. Joe's fucking goes up to the top floor. And Tomax and Xamot are there. And they do this thing where they finish each other's sentences. It's so fucking cute. And they're like talking a bunch of smack. And then they fucking dive out the window. And I'm like, what the fuck? And poles shoot out of the side of the building. And they like do this like Circus Olay like cartwheeling thing down to the bottom floor and then run away. And I'm like, that was the coolest shit I'd ever seen in my life. Like 8-year-old me was blown away by that. I was
That's
like,
adorable.
These guys are awesome. They're like acrobats in business suits.
Acrobats in business suits.
I was fucking entranced by the twins. And to have, at this point, up until now, I did not know that this guy was Tomax. He had gone under a different name, and I didn't know it. But yeah, Tomax and Xamot are here. Also, I assume you did notice that their names are palindromes. Tomax backwards is Xamot. Xamot backwards is Tomax, which I also kind of liked.
I didn't notice that.
Yeah, and
but
Tomax and Xamot. I palindrome. I. Also, they use capitalism to destroy capitalism. That is their entire approach, and I'm like, Yeah, it's hard.
I'm here for that.
As I got older, I didn't like him less. Like, yeah. So the twins, yay!
He explains. Chuckles here explains all of the shit he's got set up to go. And I appreciate all of his hard work, but I feel like this is not going to end the way he wants it to.
You are correct. It turns out that Tomax and Xamot were way ahead of him. Yep. They knew he was a spy for G.I. Joe. They set him up to shoot Jinx just to see if he would. They had a bet going with Erica, his not Jinx girlfriend. So she is totally on board with Cobra. Not at all. Like, she was using him.
He was using her.
Well, he thought he was, but apparently that power imbalance was not in his favor. He thought it was. It wasn't.
Yeah.
I mean, I sort of feel bad for him. Like,
I don't, but I also don't like him, and maybe I would have more pity maybe if I did like him. But up to this point, like, I didn't.
I felt. I mean, the guy's a piece of shit, but I still felt bad for him. Like,
nah.
Yeah.
My pity is not connected. So, like, I felt bad for Jinx, but I don't feel bad for him.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess my feeling bad for him is an extension of my feeling bad for Jinx, because this is his revenge rampage to avenge Jinx, and it's not going to happen. Like, he does not, spoilers ahead, you should have already read it, he doesn't get his revenge at all. Like, nope. The buildings he blew up, they were already going to, like, get rid of.
Well, I don't think I agree with the at all bit, but I don't, he does not accomplish the thing he comes in here to accomplish.
Yeah. Which was bringing down the whole company. But he does do a very fun thing where they're like, we know you didn't bomb this building, put bombs in this building. He's like, you're right. I didn't plant any explosives here. I couldn't. Security was too tight. But I didn't have to. And he hits a button, and the fucking bats come charging in. I'm so glad the bats came back. These fucking robots come in and just
walking bombs.
Yeah, these walking bomb bots come in and just start busting everyone's heads. He tries to shoot Tomax, and he can't because, the gun they gave him had nothing but blanks in it. As expected. But he puts it up to Xamot's face and pulls the trigger, which, even though it's a blank, like, that is painful and scarring.
Yeah. It still burns.
Yeah. And Xamot's like, hug my face. And Tomax is like, it's just a blank. Get to the helicopter.
The one not shot is really quippy about getting shot.
Yeah. So I like that Xamot always had a scar. And this is a new telling. Mm-hmm. I don't know if in the cartoon they ever told why he had a scar and Tomax didn't. But this is that origin story in this comic.
Nice.
Yeah. So we see the robots tearing everything up. And the nerdy guy who Chuckles likes end up not dying. So thumbs up for that.
Yay.
He will probably be killed shortly, though, for failing in his mission. And Chuckles sees someone that looks like Jinx run by as everyone's evacuating. Because he says, by the time I rolled Simon off of me... Oh, he has to kill Simon, too. Simon attacks him. By the time I rolled Simon off me, they were gone. I watched their helicopter fly off. It was the worst moment of my life. Almost. And he's getting a Jinx flashback as he's watching the robots beat everyone up. So the last page... Of this, we get a one-shot after this, but the last page of this is basically Chuckles going full, like, vigilante. Mm-hmm. Like, okay, well, G.I. Joe, I can't go back to G.I. Joe after this. I'm obviously no longer a member of Cobra.
Yep.
So I'm just a man without a country. I'm just gonna...
Vengeance be thy name.
Yeah, vengeance be thy name, Chuckles. And thus ends our tale of Chuckles, but it does not end our story, because we get a one-shot at the end about Tomax and Xamot, which I fucking love.
Alright, let me read this part.
Please do.
My name is Tomax Poley, and I've learned there's something I have learned. Slavery is freedom. And I wrote down another white dude waxing poetically about slavery. Geez, have an original fucking idea.
It's It is 1984. It is very much the freedom through slavery, war through peace, like that inverse. But the thing I like about this comic is the first half of it is from Tomax's point of view, and the second half is from Xamot's.
Yep.
And they are complete mirror images, backwards mirror images. So the first
now,
panel...
that part I did think was
that
really
part
neat.
is so... And if you look at each panel, like
Yeah.
if you play it back to front and front to back, every panel is this really cool mirror image of the other one.
Yep.
Like, oh my god. It is... The panel work and the idea of this comic is a fucking work of art, and I also love the story.
I also really like the fact, so something I noticed is that the page numbers go up, and then they count back down.
Right. When they get to the midpoint, when Xamot's story takes over, it counts back down, which is like so clever. And I'm a sucker for a good storytelling motif.
But just the slavery is freedom bit, like, get a new idea.
Yes. And he does explain, like, where that philosophy comes from. It's a lot of the choice paralysis that you get, where they've done studies where if you have more than a certain number of choices, like, you can't make a choice, and you aren't happy with the choice you end up making.
Yeah.
Like, choosing between two things make people feel better than choosing between three things, even though you would expect the inverse to be true. And they also did multiple studies where they were handing out free posters at a college, and the way the study worked was you had two posters, and you would pick the one you wanted. Now, one group was told that they could come back and exchange it if they wanted to in a certain amount of time, and the other group was told that you had to keep whichever poster you got. And the people who just got that choice one time and were not able to undo it were happier with their decision than the people that could change it if they wanted to. And that is all, like, wrapped up in this. But there's one panel, and I think, again, very cleverly, that gives the lie to this philosophy. Because it's told from Tomax's point of view. So he's trying to bring you along with this point of view. Mm-hmm. But some of the scenes show you that that's bullshit. And the second half with Xamot shows you it's bullshit. But we'll get there. We start out in Corsica, which is, I don't know, it's a little island off the coast of France. Mm-hmm. Famous for Napoleon. Was born in Corsica. Yeah. It's because it's one of my favorite old joke. It's one of my favorite old history jokes. Can you tell me what nationality Napoleon's parents were? Of course I can.
No.
Dun, 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 dun. Hey. So yeah, these young Frenchmen. What's bottom of panel 5? Yeah, they're talking about they got drafted as child soldiers at a very young age. And they've never really had freedom. They've kind of gone from one enterprise to another where they were given orders. Mm-hmm. And Tomax is totally on board with that. Like, he is like, it was great. I didn't have to think. I didn't have to make decisions. He just did. It all got done. And I love this. This is such a good line. At the bottom of page 5. We were young men freshly enlisted in the Foreign Legion, looking for adventure and seeking our destiny. We assumed, as all young men do, that there is only one way to conquer, with destruction. And, like, that is such a good line. Such a good line. So
my favorite line is actually on the next page. That's what I was looking for a second ago.
Yeah.
But a soldier loses his strength once armed engagement ends. And my brother and I learned our most valuable lesson in that conflict. True victory comes not from ending a struggle, but in profiting from it.
Cha-ching.
Yeah.
Again, I can see why the realism of this might have bothered you. So, I could see that. So the war that they were participating
Blackwater's calling, right?
Yeah. Took place from 1978 to 1987. It's the war between Chad and Libya that happened in Africa. And this is me just being super pedantic, but if you look at the last two digits, 78 to 87, the inverse the one is the inverse of the other, as Tomax is the inverse of Xamot. So it's weird that they took place in a war that lasted exactly the inverse number of years, from 78 to 87. But yeah, that's me being insane. So Tomax is talking about how they worked for Gaddafi. And they were like, yeah, he now sits isolated, ignored, frustrated. A lesson to all warlords. The second panel on page 7 is really important because it'll come back up again. He was a zealot. Just like in Corsica, when a young soldier felt consumed with purpose, with a mission, he would shave his head, stepping outside the comfort of society for the purity of his obsession, his misguided individualism. So Tomax is disgusted by individualism.
Yep.
And he says that in Corsica, you showed your individualism by shaving your head. Interesting. So he's talking about their operations and how great Extensive Enterprises was at fighting a war on multiple fronts. Because they said Gaddafi's mistake was that he only saw one way to victory, and it was through the gun.
Yeah.
And they were like, there's a lot of ways. Like, you definitely need the gun, and you need the power, but you also need the banks. You also need the culture. You also need to control everything from top down.
Yeah.
If you want to bring about the new world order that the Republicans are so scared of. This is how you do it. It was all about presence instead of war. We sold security. Hundreds of industries sleeping warmly under our blankets, and they couldn't wait to thank us. So it's basically
they're nice people.
Yeah, they're great. It's basically what Cecilia pointed out earlier about the operation and how it worked. You go in, you destabilize, then you give them the security that they actually had until you got there. And then they say, and then one day we met a man who offered our company a new opportunity, a new place in the world. And the guy shaking his hand has a Cobra tattoo. So we're assuming this is Cobra Commander. Bigger than we ever imagined. And we grew in power. Our appetites grew stronger too. So this is something that seems to happen to all rich people. The more money you get, the more insane your appetites get. Because you just you're not getting satisfaction from the same old thrills. You're seeking that next bit of adrenaline, something to feel alive.
Yeah.
And boy howdy, so they do. And he says everything feels different right now. And he's smiling, he's tying his tie, and he feels good. Hey, Tomax is like, things have never been better. So then we cut to Xamot. The exact same panel, except it's the brother now. And he's saying the same thing. Everything feels different now. Mm-hmm. He is talking about a totally different situation.
Yep.
So Xamot is talking about the scar that he got. And I love it that while they looked exactly the same, they were perfectly in sync with each other. Mm-hmm. The scar made Xamot look different. Ergo, now he is thinking about himself as a separate being from Tomax. Mm-hmm. And he can't handle the dichotomy. And he can't handle that, he felt so close to his brother at one time. And now there's this huge gulf between them that he has no idea how to repair or fix. But, that is such a psychological mindfuck that I really, 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 really dig it. And I also like that, honestly, Chuckles, Tomax, and Xamot, they're so similar in the ways they go about getting the things that they want, but they can't recognize that in each other. The same dirty deals, the same bad judgments, the same violence, the same anything in pursuit of the ultimate goal. Mm-hmm. Man, Chuckles might be their third long-lost brother and not even know it. But they can't recognize that in each other because they're opponents. So
there's Xamax is talking about how he's in the hospital bed and his brother's with him, but my brother was present, but not his closeness did not provide any security. And really, this sociopathic serial killer's closeness didn't bring you comfort. I'm so surprised.
Well, also, I guess there is something in that he used to feel safe with his brother, but he got shot in the face while his brother was standing right there, and his brother didn't even seem to give a shit. So that might have also broke the idea that they were alike. And I also would question, were they ever alike? Because when Xamot's talking about the things that made him happy about their time in the Bush Wars, as they call it, or the Toyota Wars.
Yeah.
Because everyone was driving Toyotas around because you needed trucks to move product. And Tomax and Xamot figured that out and started selling the trucks. And that's how they got into this whole operation. But he was like, during that time, it was the freedom.
Yeah, he literally, because I wrote down, he literally says, whereas his brother said that victory is measured in profit after the war's over, he says we had strength in arms, and victory was measured in struggle, not profit.
Yeah.
He's literally the inverse.
Yeah, and he felt that he was able to be an individual in those wars, whereas Tomax felt he was able to be a cog in a machine in those wars. It is almost like the individualist versus the societal viewpoint between these two brothers. Like, Tomax is like, I like being a gear in this Cobra machine because we're trying to bring about a better future. And Xamot is like, I'm just one half of Extensive Enterprises. I'm one half of my brother. Like, everything I do, I'm doing to this end that I don't even think I believe in anymore.
Someone really should have scarred his face as a child, then this wouldn't have happened at all.
Yeah. So I wonder if they always had an understanding through a misunderstanding. That they thought that they were on the same wavelength, but they really weren't. But it wasn't until this gunshot wound, this blank wound, that Xamot and Tomax... Well, Tomax still doesn't know. Tomax still thinks they're on the same page. But Xamot is figuring out that maybe they aren't. And maybe they never were. Says, I'm a veteran businessman, but my heart rebels and longs for vast open fields, young, alive, present, and accounted for, yet everywhere at once. I need to be liberated from my will, to be unfettered by any other influence. So he wants to be free of all this control, whereas Tomax is just reveling in it. And the last shot we see is him saying, my name is Xamot Paoli, and I would forgive everything for freedom from being a slave. And he's shaving his fucking head. Oh, it's such a good shot.
Yeah.
And it like, the way this is put together, where if you look at each page, like, flip back and forth between each page, they're perfect mirror images of each other, but in different situations.
They're inverses.
They're
basically.
such good inverses of each other. And, oh, man, I loved it. I thought that was... And that is honestly the reason we did this. The Chuckle Stories is what it is what it is. It is a Jack Reacher read-along. But, man, those last 20 pages are... that's comic art. Like, and it tells a story that I really, really loved.
Yeah.
So...
No, I enjoyed I liked those two more than I did.
Oh yeah, Tomax. I would have much rather read a comic about those two. There's a group of Cobra guys called the Dreadnoughts, and they're basically this biker gang that loves chocolate donuts and grape soda. Because again, it was a kids' cartoon, and they were my favorite. All they did was just ride motorcycles around, and I was like, that seems fun. And one of them was named Buzzer. And he was a psychologist who was doing from Australia, who was doing his master thesis on biker gangs. So he went to study them and ended up finding the life so interesting that he became a biker. And I went,
that's adorable.
I know. I was like, that's who I want to be.
That's cute. Yeah. That's cute. I'm gonna have to give that credit where credit is due.
There's a guy named Larry Hama. I'm gonna give him a quick shout out here. He did, on the back of every G.I. Joe you would buy, there was a file card. And it would have their name, their specialty, and then a blurb about them. And he wrote 98% of those.
Yeah.
And he always did such a good job as making it fun and believable and making every character different and have a purpose and have, like, their own motivations. Mm-hmm. So within Cobra, you've got all these people who are doing their own shit and have their own reasons for being involved. It was for a children's toy line. It was really well thought out.
Nice.
And it became so popular that Stephen King's son, who is now actually a well-known writer himself, wrote one of the file cards for one of the bad guys named Crystal Ball. Yeah. And also they...
Did you just say Crystal Ball?
That was his name. So...
These things hurt me. So...
These things hurt me. So... These things hurt me. So... These things hurt me. So... These things hurt me. So... These things hurt me. So... These things hurt me. So... These things hurt me. So... These things hurt me. So... These things hurt me. So... These things hurt me. So... These things hurt me. So... These things hurt me. So... These things hurt me. So... These things hurt me. So... These things hurt me. So... These things hurt me. So... These things hurt me. So... These things hurt me. So... These things hurt me. So... These things hurt me. So... These things hurt me. So... These things hurt me. So... These things hurt me. So... These things hurt me. So... These things hurt me. So... These things hurt me. So... These things hurt me. So... These things hurt me. So... These things hurt me. So... These things hurt me. So... These things hurt me. So... These things hurt I want to play a little game about these things that hurt you. What I've done is...
I'm scared.
Don't be scared. This is so fun. And
okay.
Again, there's literally... You lose nothing if you get it wrong. I have written down the names of some G.I. Joe or Cobra code names.
Okay.
And I've sprinkled in one of my own.
Okay.
So there are 5 of these. I'm sorry. Yeah, there are 5 of these. I'm going to read them out in groups of 4, and you tell me which one I made up. So you have a 25% chance, a little higher if you actually recognize any of these names. All right, the first one I call the cock metaphors. We have Big Boa, Wild Weasel, Trouser Snake, and Red Dog. Which one did I pick?
Which one did you make up?
Yes, which one did I make? Big Boa, Wild Weasel, Trouser Snake, Red Dog.
Trouser Snake.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank God. All right, thank God. Thank God.
Yes. All right. The second is called Fun with Animals. Which one did I make up? Butter Bear, Sea Slug, Tunnel Rat, Ferret.
Butter Bear.
2 for 2.
Look at me.
You're killing it. You're killing it. All right. Number 3, words for farts. Which one did I make up? Backblast, Gas Man, Hot Seat, Updraft.
I hope you made up all of those.
Backblast, Gas Man, Hot Seat, Updraft.
Backblast.
No, Gas Man I made up. That is a real person.
Oh, God. Okay.
All right. Number 4 is called 3 G's and an F, because I didn't have a better name for it. Grand Slam, Grunt, Gobbler, or the Fridge.
Gobbler.
Yeah, you got it.
Yay!
Yeah, I really thought the Fridge would get you. The Fridge was actually named after Refrigerator Perry, who was a Chicago Bears football player that they made into a G.I. Joe. Weird, huh? Very famous in the 80s. They also did it with Sergeant Slaughter. Sergeant Slaughter was a professional wrestler who they turned into a G.I. Joe. And later, Roddy Rowdy Piper, another wrestler, got a G.I. Joe figure.
That's a choice.
Yeah. And the last one is called the Leftover Weirdos.
Okay.
We have Star Destroyer, Ice Cream Soldier, Cowboy Orton, Dr. Mindbender.
Ice Cream Soldier.
No, it was Cowboy Orton was the one I made up. Ice Cream Soldier was a real guy in the G.I. Joe army.
Oh,
Cowboy Orton, as a callback to our last one, Cowboy Orton was a professional wrestler who teamed with Roddy Piper, that guy that became a G.I. Joe, in the first WrestleMania main event. All right, along with Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff. None of that matters. All right.
Yeah, I've already forgotten it.
Yes. Just saying, there's a reason I put that in there. All right, big question. That was your big quiz.
I did better than I thought I'd do.
You really did. You got 80%. That's a passing.
I'm
You
good.
passed.
Yay! I get to stay on the podcast.
You are either really good or I'm really bad at coming up with ridiculous code names. These guys are professional. Larry Hama's been doing it forever. I can't compete. Big question. Would you like an identical twin?
No.
If you could go back in time and at birth having had an identical twin, you're saying no.
I don't
why?
I don't like my face that much. I don't really want anyone else to have it.
Mine's the same answer, but the exact opposite. I like my face so much, I don't want anyone else to have it. Mine's a greed thing.
I don't want a twin.
No?
No.
I feel like I also don't want a twin. I mean, there's a certain camaraderie there that I think would be interesting, and if you got cool, like, twin superpowers, that'd be sort of neat.
I think I derive too much of my identity from being the oldest sibling.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't...
And you're assuming you'd be the oldest? Yeah, like...
No, I don't know if I would be the oldest, which would bother me. I like being the oldest, and I like the responsibility of taking care of people.
Wow, okay.
So I would be bothered if that weren't part of my identity. Like, I don't know who I would be outside of those things. And so I don't like that. And also, the way I grew up, I have a hard time imagining what that would look like with someone else.
With another person involved.
Who's the same age and at the same stages of development at the same time as me.
All right.
I don't like it.
I'm fascinated. Actually, much like having children, I'm fascinated with it in theory, but I don't think I would want it in reality. I don't think I would be able to handle having another me out there, because number one, there would be a constant feel of competition, and I already feel that with my sister, because that's what my mother created. And imagining another me that let's say there was Reno and
Beano.
Named after an anti-gas medication. My parents got real lazy. I was the first one out, and then they were like, I don't know, Beano.
What Reno? And,
what rhymes with Reno?
What's Reno backwards?
Owner.
Oner.
Yeah.
Oner.
So Oner ends up becoming really successful. Let's say. I'm not sure I can handle that, because we literally have the exact same setup. Like, we look the same. We get the same genetic material. Like, I think that would drive me crazy.
I think part of the problem there, though, is in your logic, because that just because people have the same genetic makeup doesn't mean that they're the same person.
And I know that on a logical level, but on an emotional level, I don't think I would make that distinction. I don't make it now with people that I have nothing in common with. I see people that are doing things that I want to have done or wish I have done, and I compare myself to them in a very unflattering way. And it's not a healthy thing. And I imagine if it was someone who looked like me as well, it could end really badly for me. Like,
that's fair. That's
some sort of murder-suicide thing. Like, I don't know. I shudder to think. The world is blessed to have one of me, and would be cursed to have two of me, I think.
This is a case of less is more.
Less is more. Yeah. I bet that fucker would start a podcast, and it'd be like twice as successful as mine. And it would be about like...
have to abandon this shit.
Yeah, you wouldn't though, because it'd be about like money managing or something.
Ew.
It'd be like about buying property in Brazil.
It'd be about crypto.
Yeah, it'd be so about crypto. He'd be like one of the 4 people. He'd be one of the fucking 4 people that actually made money off crypto. I hate him so much. God, I hate him.
He's not even real.
I know. That's why. Oh, I'm so glad he's not. What a dick. What a dick my twin is. Owner.
Owner, we hate you.
You suck, Owner.
Oner.
So, thus ends our foray into G.I. Joe. I hope you enjoyed it. I liked some of this and hated other parts of it. I'd probably give it a C-. I believe that the last 20 pages are bringing that grade way, way, way up.
You're grading on a curve.
I'm giving it an A+, and I'm giving the rest of it a E+. With little moments of C quality thrown in. You know, little jokes that made me laugh, little bits that landed. Tomax and Xamot were also in that part, so, you know, I give it a little extra for that.
Tomax and Xamot saved the whole thing.
They really did. Cobra. I'm Cobra for life, I guess. But yeah, that's my review. I hope you all got this for free. If you paid for it, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But we've read it, and now we're leaving the G.I. Joe universe.
Yay!
Probably will not be back unless I find something. We might do an issue, like a little quick one shot on. There's a very famous issue of G.I. Joe called the Silent Issue, with no words. It's just a fight between two ninjas, Storm Shadow and Snake Eyes, just fucking doing some badass katana fights. And it's a really well-known comic because it was very brave. It had no words. It was just all panel, all art. And I would love to have a copy of that. And if I ever find one cheap, which would be someone who didn't know what they had, I would review it as a little one-off for the show because it's a fascinating piece of comic history. Other than that, we probably will not go back into the G.I. Joe universe unless I find a real gem in the rough. If anyone has any G.I. Joe that they thought were great and avoided some of the pitfalls of this one, recommend in the comments. And if I find it, I'll take a gander at it. And if you are a Patreon, recommend it in the Discord.
Yeah. And if you don't, that sounds great too, because I did not enjoy this one.
No, that's fair. Well, Cecilia, what are we doing in 2 weeks? Is it something you will enjoy more?
It is something I will enjoy more, because in 2 weeks we will be doing Inspector Kogami from the Psycho-Pass universe, and I am really looking forward to that.
Yes.
2 volumes, yes, that's right. We're doing volume 1 and 2.
Yes, for that we are doing volume 1 and 2. They are short enough that I don't feel we are giving you an undue... I feel like a teacher trying to convince their students. I'm like, this is not an undue lengthy assignment. They're short volumes. You can do this. And we'll see you back here in 2 weeks.
Until then, be your own ally.
Be your own ally. And also, if your weakness is a pretty face, find a new weakness.
Or at least, be more ethical about it.
Yeah, be more ethical. And speaking of ethical, follow, leave 5-star reviews, all the media, Twitch on Sunday, all the socials. And, this will all be in the comments. If you have interest in any of that, look in the comments. And we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Bye-bye.